guys, so there's not much happening in the game right now, so I thought I'd do a fun little comparison between these two games and answer the question, is Bleach Soul Resonance a copy of honkaistarrail? Let's find out. Now, I'm going to start off with something that isn't similar, which is the combat. See, HSR is turn-based, so classic RPG. You have your turn, the enemy has theirs, so you do a back and forth exchange. Thing about Soul Resonance is it's a full 3D action game, and let me tell you, it's one of the best 3D action games that I have ever played, hands down. I might be glazing a little bit, I might have a strong bias because it's my favorite game that I'm playing right now, but the combat is night and day. It's so much better in this game. That's something that they've done much better than HSR. So the next thing here is the base game banners. Now it's pretty much identical down to the 5 discounted multis. The only difference being Soul Resonance added an additional banner where you could get exclusive weapons for those, basic game characters, which is super nice because in HSR you either got them randomly through summons, which isn't ideal because that would mean the actual thing that you were actually trying to summon for you didn't get, and instead you got this. Or you would have to buy it in shop, which, as you can imagine, isn't really free-to-play friendly. So once again, Soul Resonance did it way better, but again, it is quite similar. So in this particular case, they're pretty much copies of each other. So naturally, the next question is, are the limited banners similar? Now, they look the same, the currency is the same, but surprisingly, it isn't similar at all. See, the thing is, HSR that has this weird pity system, which is like 50-50. So meaning you're not guaranteed the character that's on the banner until, say, the second time you go about things. What I mean by that is, say you do 60 summons, you finally get a 5-star, but it has like a 50-50 chance of either being the featured character or just being a random 5-star, which sucks. But say you then do your summons again and you do 60 again, and then a 5-star shows up, then that's guaranteed to be the featured character, which, as you can imagine, you can end up wasting like 120 tickets, sometimes 80, 160, 190 if you end up going to the, guaranteed pity, which is 90 summons. So it's not free-to-play friendly at all in that sense. And then it also has like its own weapon stance kind of system, which also does a 50-50 system. So meaning, say you summoned for the weapon stance and you finally made a 5-star weapon stance appear. Well, guess what? That's not guaranteed to be the featured weapon stance. So that's when you can get random base game character SSR stamps. And then say you do it again, and then you try to get the stamp again. And on that second attempt, then you're guaranteed to get the featured weapon stance. Now, not to say it's an impossibility that you can't still get those featured characters or featured weapon stances, but as you can imagine, it is kind of really random. It is RNG, so it's not really that ideal. Whereas then Soul Resonance has done it once again the better way, which is you're just guaranteed at 80 summons, you're just guaranteed you're going to get the featured character. So, and same thing with their weapon stance. So 40 summons guaranteed, which is excellent. So again, similar, but not really. So an additional thing I wanted to mention before I moved on from summoning is this right here. Now, this is something HSR never introduced. So this is exclusively something that I've discovered in this game, which is really good and really player friendly. Now, to say that HSR isn't player friendly and doesn't do stuff for the community would be ingenuous, because they do. A lot of the time, they just give you free 5-star characters. I literally, a new character that just come out, they'll be like, okay, you can have it on like a major celebration, or sometimes it's just a weapon stance, a 5-star weapon stance for a relevant character that just dropped. They'll just give it to you for free depending on the celebration. So they are pretty good. They are pretty friendly with their player base. But again, this is something they never introduced, and I thought it was worth shouting this out. So from this point forward, you're going to see a lot of similarities. Now, you can see these modes right here. Both of these modes in both of these games are exactly identical. So for example, you can even see it says ability tree. In the Ichigo one, it says spirit tech. So essentially, it's the simulated universe, but in this game, it's called adventure mode. But you do the exact same things. You go for the same passives, you go for the same type of rewards. Even when you're cashing out those rewards, they're cashing out those currencies, you're pretty much going for the same things, which is going to be tickets. So summon tickets or weapon stance tickets or whatever it is. Basically, you're playing for the same exact reason. You're doing the exact same things. in the exact same way. Now, in terms of equipment, it's pretty much the exact same thing for both games. Now, they just call different things. One calls them relics, the other one calls them stamps. But in terms of RNG, in terms of farming them, in terms of how tedious getting the exact stats are, it's exactly the same. There's no differences whatsoever. Now, the one additional thing in Bleach is we have this thing called core stamps. Instead of core stamps, they have link ropes and spears. But it's exactly the same thing, though. There's not much of a difference whatsoever. So and both games have crafting. Just the only difference is that HSR has done something better that Bleach hasn't done yet, which is when you're about to craft the stamp or relic that you want, you can actually select what kind of stats you want on there. Which, as you can imagine, if you've been screwed over by RNG, you know that that's super useful. But the only thing with that is the currency is kind of rare. Yeah, you can recycle a lot of those gold gears and you can get part of the currency, but in terms of the selector, there's a currency you need to select exactly the stats you want, and that's a bit more rarer than, say, the other currency. But that particular currency you get through doing events, so it can be a bit rare, but it is worth it, especially say if you have one set left that you keep on trying and you're not getting the RNG luck that you need, then you can do that, and it'll just make your life a lot easier. But yeah, in terms of how identical they are, they're pretty much exactly the same. Now, the thing about this isn't beat for beat exactly the same, but this is base game content that was there on day one for both these games. So, and essentially the idea is the same for both, which is clear the stage, you get the rewards, clear the stage, you get the rewards, and it's permanent and is always going to be there. So, in what you're looking at the bottom, it's called the Forgotten Hole, and I think there's only 12 stages. Whereas the one at the top is a trial tower, and I mean that has many stages. I don't even think it has like a limit yet, or if it does, I haven't reached it yet myself. So I'm not sure whether or not if this is a good enough comparison to make, but this is something that I just giving you an idea of. There are similarities in terms of content too. So now the next is the technique upgrades. A slight different in HSR, but it's pretty much the exact same thing. Now the difference in HSR is there's an additional currency you need to upgrade their techniques, which is something you get from fighting boss battles. But outside of that, exactly the same thing. Alrighty, so the next question is, how similar are their kits? And I'm just going to tell you right now, they're not similar at all. Look, ability-wise, they're quite... That part is similar. They have dot dealers, we have dot dealers. They have ice dealers, we have ice dealers. They have shielders, we have shielders. They have healers, we have healers. They have debuffers, we have debuffers. We got buffers, they got buffers, etc., etc. You understand that the abilities are exactly the same, but in terms of the kit itself, it couldn't be more different. So, for example, their first DPS, which is Seely, that girl with the scythe right there. The thing with her was really high DPS, really good DPS, but the issue was she was a single target DPS. Now, we didn't get that. Ichigo has AoE in his attacks, which, as you can imagine, is really good. So the whole reason Seely got aged out was because she was single target, and because Ichigo doesn't have that problem, he has less danger of aging out. Because after 3 months, 4 months of Seely coming out in that base initial period of the game, they then introduced new modes that would introduce hordes of enemies. Tons of enemies, bunch of enemies, and then obviously you can imagine she couldn't compete, and people basically stopped using her, whereas Ichigo won't have that issue. So now these are the characters that then followed. So Bankai Ichigo, then we got Toshiro, they got that lion guy, then we got Aizen, they got that chick over there, and then we got Aocha and Gin. So in terms of all the characters we got so far, Bleach holds it down in terms of how good our characters are. But I'm not going to lie, it's when they dropped this guy in the middle that the whole game changed. The whole game, with him came a lot of tougher events. They got Swarm Disaster, they got like a bunch of different modes that had mobs. I mean, I'm talking mobs and mobs and mobs of enemies. The difficulty, these characters got power crept so fast you couldn't imagine. The game was a whole different landscape. So then that does make me sort of wonder, are we going to get our own variant of Blade, considering there's so many similarities already, or are we going to get our own variant of the Swarm Disaster, considering, again, the similarities? Which would be nice, but, again, it's just speculation, Lord knows. We're going to probably find out the upcoming month or the month after that, because it was around then that all these new things got introduced. So just a quick reason why Blade was so good, by the way, is because he had like self-healing in his kit. A lot of his moves would either heal him or damage him. Now, to basically get him into his little trance mode, he would little transformation, I guess. He would like siphon his own blood and then go into this weird countering attack mode. He would he would hit multiple enemies multiple times. He would counter, and on his counters, he would heal himself. And whenever he would use his ultimate, he would pretty much fully heal himself. So he was pretty much unkillable. He was one of the only characters in the game that you can leave on auto and on his own. Like, you don't even need a team for him, and he was able to clear pretty much every piece of content. He was that good, and he still is, to be honest. He's one of the weirdest characters in the game because he hasn't aged. In his DPS, in terms of how much damage he does, he has aged in that sense, but he's still good enough to do a lot of things he used to do. So he's one of those characters that has kind of survived the test of time. He's a really, really good character. So anyway, so now finally the question is this game a ripoff of the HSR game? Now, I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I kind of think it is, but at the same time, it's kind of done enough of its own thing that I think it deserves to be its own thing and respected as its own thing. It's kind of like, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Dark Souls series of games. Now, in those games, they got so popular, right? There were people left, right, and center making Souls-like copies. So there were games that would have the exact same mechanics, but obviously they would change the story or add in different type of mechanics, and they made thousands, and I'm talking thousands, hundreds of games that were Souls-like, and only you could count on your hand the amount of Souls-likes that were actually comparable in terms of quality, or I mean, some were potentially even better than the Souls-like Souls games. So I think this is the Neo. I think this is the, I don't know, man. I think Neo's a good comparison. I mean, that was a series of games that I really liked that was Souls-like, and I was like, yeah. I think this is the Kazan, this is the Neo of the Souls-likes for HSR. Because let's be honest, the thing with HSR is it really is a big game, right? It has a huge player base, and for right reasons. If you haven't played that game, I can't recommend it enough to you. It's a really, really good game. And I mean, you know, case in point kind of thing. If it wasn't, why would Bleach need to copy so many elements from it? Yeah, and Bleach isn't the only one. The Kaiji number 9 copied pretty much everything from, HSR. That Persona mobile game, exactly the same thing. Because the thing is, it's the gold standard of these mobile games right now, which is HSR. Because it's on a lot of platforms too. It's on PC, it's on PlayStation. But my point being is, though it's not as big, and right now anyway, not as successful as the HSR game, I still think the Bleach game is fantastic, and I do recommend it to people who haven't played it so far, and is wondering whether or not you want to play it. I think both of these games are fantastic. Are there similarities? Did the devs copy a lot of the core elements from HSR? Absolutely. I mean, yeah, there's no denying it. You know what I mean? It's right there. But it doesn't take anything away from their efforts. It doesn't take anything away from the game. I think they did a fantastic job. And again, transitioning from a turn-based sort of game and then making your live action sort of like, not live action, like 3D action game, it's a feat. They should be commended for that. So there you go. I'll catch you guys later.